Crossfade just disappears.
Yeah.
And we've all been wondering, myself included, where has Crossfade been after all these years?
So, the short version, well, it won't be a short version. What happened was,
we're here in Columbia, South Carolina. A couple of weeks ago, I got a call that I wouldn't believe. A band that's disappeared and been gone for many years, that most of us thought would never return, is finally making a triumphant comeback.
We are here with Ed Sloan from Crossfade, one of my favorite songwriters. Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely, my man. It's my pleasure.
I'm so excited, and if you're watching this now, you're probably at home going, oh my goodness, Crossfade is back. Let's just start with the beginning of the band and just talk about, let's say, like the first time you remember meeting Mitch and like how your musical relationship started.
So yeah, the first time meeting Mitch, he was in a band called Black Lung.
and it was called Black Lung. And we were kind of the big deal at our high school. So Ed was at another high school, and he was in a band, I think it was called Dark Child, maybe. And we did a battle of the bands or something and played with each other. And I was just like, who is this singer, man? This guy is crazy. Because I was a singer of my band.
He was a lead singer, bass player, and I was blown away. He's like 6'4". And introduced myself. We got to know each other for a couple of years. And then right when I was leaving Columbia to go to Atlanta to embark on my musical journey, saw him at a concert. I said, hey man, want to move to Atlanta with me, start a band? And he said, sure. And we left like 2 weeks later for Atlanta.
Moved to Atlanta, went to the Guitar Institute of Technology or whatever it was, whatever the Atlanta one is. And just hung out in Atlanta for a couple of years, kind of honing our craft and writing songs and, you know, trying to get through life and make money on the side and still try to be in a band. It was difficult.
So I'd just gotten off tour. I've been playing with Trey Anastasio, and so I was not playing heavy rock, and wanted to. I wanted loud amplifiers and big guitars and whatnot. So we looked up one night at the bar, went back to the studio when they were finishing up a second record, hung out all night, started messing around with some of the stuff, and then I think kind of just like that, it was we're in the rehearsal room working on a song or two, and then on tour.
Definitely grew up, you know, Metallica is what started it all for me. And then obviously that got me into Soundgarden, Alice in Chains down the road.
We didn't play much, and when we did play, it was a mixture of cover songs just so we could get our music out as well. So we'd have to play 3-hour sets at bars, and you know, we'd bust out the heavy stuff, and some of the patrons didn't like that so much, so we kind of had to whittle our way and then learn a Garth Brooks song or learn this or that to fill the time, you know, Brown Eyed Girl or whatever. So we're pushing it as far as being a young band anymore. We're kind of at that midway point to it's almost time to give it up kind of thing. And we were like, well, let's just do one last push.
Oh yeah, that was when we renamed the band Sugar Daddy Superstar.
I love that name.
Of course.
Very new metal.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, very new metal vibes.
And there was a very good reason for that. You know, we were the Nothing, a very heavy band. Point being, it was really heavy. We needed to make money somehow, and you couldn't play around here in Columbia, and so the only way we could make money was play cover songs. So we had to force some gear to record what would become the Crossfade record many years later. But to make money for that, you know, we played 4-hour-long shows of cover songs, anything from Billy Joel to the latest Soundgarden stuff, and then we would throw in the Nothing songs, which was our band at the time, hoping that people wouldn't like run out the building at that moment. And so we did that for a couple of years. No, we did that for like 8 years. And at the time, that was probably like 1998. We didn't know, I didn't know what kind of music. I just knew I wanted to do music. I wanted to sing, I wanted to play guitar. So I wrote like a country album, I wrote a pop album, I wrote a heavy metal album. And I wrote rock album.
Right before you get signed, seems like things are not going to happen possibly. Was that devastating for you? What did that feel like when you tried so hard and it wasn't connecting at that time?
It felt like every other day of being in a band, you know, let's take over the world, but really I got to be at work at 10, so let's wrap up this practice, you know, whatever. So it's just it wasn't devastating. It was just monumental when it actually did happen. We were just like, we don't now what do we do? Because we weren't road dogs. We didn't spend months in a van traveling the country. We were playing local shows or, you know, an hour away. That was our tour.
And my manager at the time called and said, Columbia Records just wants to hear you live. It's just one last chance up in New York. So, of course, you know, I don't know if I borrowed money, borrowed a van. So we ran up there and played 3 songs. I think it was like Starless, Death Trendsetter, and then obviously Cold.
Don Einer, who is the president of Columbia Records, flew Crossfade in for a showcase at SIR in New York City. And I was there, Matt Pinfield was there, Doug Ford was there, who originally brought them in, and it was so big. And Don Einer stands up and says, "Welcome to Columbia Records," and I'll never forget it. And then when all the execs left, it was me and the band and Matt Pinfield and Doug, and the guys were like, "What just happened?" And then we were like, "I think you just got signed to Columbia Records. Congratulations." And it was amazing.
I think Starless was the one I thought
That's such a
everybody was
hit,
gonna
too.
love, you know, because, and then we got finished playing and Donnie Einer from Columbia Records came and said, "Hey, welcome to the family."
It was, to me, he was really a genius. He was one of these guys who, you know, could write incredibly great relative songs and emote them in a way that, you know, you really could feel the lyrics through those songs. And I absolutely loved it. You know, so it blew me away.
So they played the song, and I was shocked because it was freaking great. So that was my first time I heard it, and then I heard the story that this is, you know, unsigned band in Columbia, South Carolina, who Ed wrote this amazing song in his basement, and the radio station's playing it, and they want to sign it and make it the largest thing since sliced bread. So I was all in.
Because it was the end of the road for us. You know, it was like 13 years, a culmination of all of this, and I was about to just, I don't know if I really would have threw in the towel had we not gone up to New York that one last time.
At that time, rock was so big, and all the major labels were chasing it. So most of the artists were like bidding war type bands. You know, here's a band from Columbia, South Carolina, that got their song to Rock 93.5 here, and it started taking on.
A guy named Gary, I remember, he was my boss, and he loved the music so much, I was like, he would let me off to go do these showcases and come back, and I still had a seat when I came back to continue programming when we played that showcase for Columbia Records. And you know, the culmination of everything is welcome to Columbia Records. At a time when it's just almost impossible to be seen, to get there.
Right.
And this is New York City. We're Columbia, South Carolina boys. We go stay in a hotel that night, and needless to say, I forgot what the other guys were doing. I was running up and down the halls. I was down in the streets of New York City with a Walkman, headphones, which is all you could listen to music back then, by the way. Just walking the streets of New York, just feeling like I was on something, and I didn't do anything in those days. Just the most amazing feeling. I'll never forget that day. So I go back to work on Monday, and of course you're letting all your friends and family know, hey, we got a record deal with Columbia Records. You know,
What are they saying?
at the time the biggest label you can think of. I mean, they're everybody's ecstatic. You know, my parents were always supportive. My sister always supportive. So they gave us a release date, and I think that was like 6 months out. So we were at home, normal lives for 6 months, but changing from Sugar Daddy Superstar to Crossfade. They were going to push it out like another 9 months, which wound up happening.
So it was a long time where you have this, I got a deal, but you can't, no one really understands it.
Right. It's like we're not playing shows. It's not like we're building up to the record. It's just like let's hold off putting this out till the right time comes.
So it was like a year and a half. We were at home sitting on this record, working our jobs, just waiting on the moment again to happen. So we had the big moment that happened in New York, and then we got home, and for a year and a half, we're just kind of stewing around Columbia, wondering when it's all going to start. I was fully prepared all through that. You know, I was working, you know, full time, except for when we were off doing these showcases. I think when I say I was going to throw in the towel, that was never really going to happen.
You guys really recorded the record yourself.
Yes.
People talk about self-producing all the time, but Ed was way ahead of his time. He was one of those guys, I mean, he really was a mad genius in his basement. Those songs were great. They were fully realized.
I wanted music so badly to be the thing in my life that was going to be just what I always did, and it wasn't coming the way I thought it was. That I think that kind of put me in this dark place, even though music was the thing that kind of saved my life on a daily basis. I was still kind of in a wreck because things weren't happening fast enough for me. And when I look back, you know, I had a great life. But at the time, you know, I think I pictured myself in just this sad place, in this sad world. And that's where all this music came from, to be able to capture what I was feeling at the time. I guess just, it was so poignant to me, but I guess to other people, we all go through those times in life, and somehow some of these songs captured that. I was still amazed, you know, just thinking about the longevity of that.
You guys turn this record and you get that mix back. Is there a moment where you sat down and heard the record in full for the first time and you're like, what was your response?
Hearing the final product was everything we had wished it would be.
I remember sitting out in the parking lot playing Dead Skin for the band. It was like one of the first songs that came out of this computer and stuff. First songs that we hadn't recorded in I guess you wouldn't say professional, but a studio around the Carolinas, you know, semi-professional. And I think they were just blown away, like, you did this in the house, man? You know.
Did it have that intro, like that doom-doom-down?
Oh, yeah.
You made that tone?
Oh, it was exactly the tracks that you hear on the record now. I mean, the only difference is it was mixed by Randy Stahl.
So not only did you, see, because not everybody does this, not only did you write this record that still holds up all these years later, you literally recorded it yourself.
Oh, yeah, every spec, every vocal, every guitar.
I think everything we wrote was personal to us. You know, when the first album came out, we were all having, you know, the same issues as everybody else, trying to make money, trying to pursue a career, trying to find our spot in this music thing. And then, of course, the second record, Ed and I were both going through a divorce. So that album went super dark. So, and then the third album was just, you know, with the addition of Les, just became a whole different animal altogether.
I think I had like a pink Ibanez I borrowed from a friend. It was a 6-string, and I had just heard about 7-string guitars, which now is all we play and has been all this time. But I think I went to Sims, our local store, and got some really heavy gauge strings, restrung the guitar so that I could tune it down to this new, you know, low B, this new 7-string thing. And that's when I think I first played the riff. Could barely play 7-string, you know, starless, you know, the and then that took everything in an entirely different direction. Like, this is amazing. There's 7 strings. So, you know, that opened up to all kind of, you know, disco and Death Trendsetter and this really heavy side. I think some of the first songs that were written were, you know, like you know, the Colors, the Starless, but not the heavy Starless. It was the if only you could watch me fall, you know,
like
the
first verse,
the heartfelt stuff, the Colors, the Dead Skin. It was all like geared towards, hey, this is just the way I feel. It's all kind of ballady, if you will,
right?
But with these heavy choruses, you know. Right. But I think that was before the 7-string days, and then I got the 7-string, and then it's like, you know, disco, Death Trendsetter, the deep end, you know, all this really low stuff. So that was kind of a transition, I guess, in the way that I wrote.
And this was 2002, so this was not the new age of record stuff. There was no garage band.
Right.
There was none of that. We had a a version of Cakewalk.
Were you really, at the time you were writing this, like, I need the biggest hooks I can have? The hooks on that record, dude.
I don't know where they came from, man. I really don't. I can say this, at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I was recording my own vocal, not in a booth. I was in this giant brick sort of basement with a pool table with these giant speakers, like radio speakers, not professional monitoring speakers. Most any song I ever wrote for that record was just I would just get in the mic and I would just kind of get lost.
Right.
Then I would just be there by myself, just singing for hours.
Started getting out there, and I think we went out for the first time in Ed's van in a trailer for about.
What kind of van?
Just like a Econoline. I mean, like a van with seats in the back. It wasn't like a worker's van.
Okay, it wasn't like a Scooby-Doo kind of van?
It wasn't awful.
It's more like a minivan type deal?
No, it was
Sprinter?
like a full-size van, but it had like the top cap so you could stand up in it.
Nice.
Yeah, one of those old school ones. But we ran that thing into the ground, and like I said, we were out maybe 4 weeks. Came home for 3 days, and they were like, "Oh, you're going out with Smile Empty Soul next." We're like, "When?" They're like, "In 3 days." And I think from that date until we got home to actually take a break was 18 months.
Oh my goodness.
We were probably home, I would say, a total of 20 days. In
18 months on the road.
Wide open, man.
I didn't know that you and Ed knew each other in school growing up.
7th grade.
Did you guys hang out a lot, or was that kind of guy you just knew around school?
A little bit. Even when I moved to the other school, he came by and we'd jam on guitar or whatnot. I'm not sure we would jam. We'd probably like try and hot lick each other, something like that. But yeah, I mean, we not a lot of playing then. He and Mitch were into heavier stuff than I was at the time, but it was kind of cool. We'd run into each other here and there. But then I moved out to LA, was on tour doing some really cool gigs, and then he's out here and they're having some amazing success, which was awesome to see.
The record was released. They put us on a tour, obviously not headlining. I think we were opening up for Smile Empty Soul. I guess Cold started catching on, and Columbia Records saw that. And I think going to these other cities, somewhere in Oklahoma, somewhere in California, turning on the radio, hearing Cold in a remote place in the United States, and there's your song on the radio. I think that was probably okay, I've got my proof. There's no going back now.
There were so many people that helped make that record the biggest rock record of 2005. And still to this day, it streams millions and millions every week. It's a multi-platinum record. And there are a lot of people like yourself who are younger when it might have been the first record that mom bought for you at Walmart or wherever. And the band, they didn't have a long career. And so everyone still talks about this record.
I'm not on social media at all, and I haven't been for the past 5 or 6 years for my own sanity. Of course, I watch you.
Dude,
I watch
yes.
YouTube and stuff.
I didn't know that, guys, by the way. I didn't know that.
I love it. Everything you do, man.
Thank you.
You fast forward to today. I haven't really done anything for 10, 12 years with Crossfade or with any band. And to know that after all of that time, still some of the same fans, yet new fans that are willing to still, and I hear that people comment through the grapevine from my bandmates and stuff, and that's why we're here today.
At some point, Crossfade just disappears.
Yeah.
And we've all been wondering, myself included, where has Crossfade been after all these years?
So, the short version, well, it won't be a short version. What happened was we were home after, a tour that did not go quite as well as we hoped. Les had a bachelor party, which we all attended. And after the bachelor party, we all, after many drinks, went back to the studio, which was a very large space, and just hung out. So I ended up leaving to go home. Several of the guys fell asleep there. A heater caught on fire. burned our entire studio to the ground. 25 years worth of equipment, songs, computers, pictures, merch, everything. That was a quick way to say, well, I guess we're done for a while.
I was tired of the road. I was tired of tired of the production of the thing. And I was listening to music and not really appreciating it anymore. And so I guess I just got burnt out. I call Les my first producer, because I wouldn't get off my butt to do anything. I didn't want to, but I wanted to still be a part of this thing. And he started writing, and it got me back into it a little bit, to the point to where we finished that record. We did a tour. We had fun.
I'll say this, that album took a while. I think everybody was burnt out from being on tour. So it was a good 2 years in the studio, and I was 100% all in. I think Ed was very burnt at that time because I felt like I had a lot of freedom to add to, and it's definitely a different sounding record, darker, heavier.
We actually came home to write the fourth record. We were set on doing that, and I think this was sometime 2012, but our studio caught fire and burnt to the ground. So every piece of equipment, every song I had written, recorded, everything up in flames. At that point, I think I just said, you know what, I think that's a sign. I think I started working on some stuff on my own and released some stuff along the way, but I was just in another lost, dark place. But some of my own solo music came out of that, which I finally found a good place. This is the first time that I've seen Mitch and Les in a room in 2 or 3 years. We haven't rehearsed in at least 12 years. So I'm coming back because people in the industry have, including yourself, have reached out to us and said, listen, you guys are still important to us.
Yes.
I had no clue. I mean, I know the hardcores because I was always on Facebook, always accepted everybody's request, even back then. So I knew they were out there, but it was always the same people that we had met on the road, and I didn't know it went much further than that. And then Spotify, kind of came along in 2012, 2013, and then we started seeing, wow, we got a ton of people still listening to our stuff, and it just was right over our heads. We didn't know because at that point, we didn't have a label, we didn't have a manager, we didn't have anybody, we didn't have any equipment. So we just kind of, let it kind of pass by us. But once we started seeing some build, we were like, oh man. And then, you get some residual checks occasionally, and you're like, how? How is this? It's been 10 years, So it was just a nice surprise to see how many people are still out there. And then, of course, people forwarding your let's get Crossfade back together things on the rock feed.
Let's go.
I mean, it was amazing to see how many people were with you.
Best audience in the world.
When Danny Wimmer introduced me to you at Aftershock, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you found out that I was the label guy for Crossfade, the look on your face was amazing. And I will never forget, you're like, dude, I'm gonna post about this band every week, sometimes multiple times a week, and I'm telling you, we're gonna will this to make happen. And every time you would post something, literally, everybody would forward it to me, and Mitch said the same thing. And the hard part was that Ed wasn't on social media. He had no idea. And so literally, little by little, we were trying to figure out how to kind of bring this all together, and that brings us to this day.
I was first coming up in the business, and I was Matt's right hand. So we got to do this album together. So this album, this is the original CD from 2004, it meant everything to me. And Matt was such a great mentor that he really let me help with this album. And I think this was the first album that I really helped sequence. So the 10 songs and the order that they're in, I just remember loving The Unknown. And to this day, it's just such a beautiful song, and it's a perfect album closer. And of course, Cold was so massive at radio. I loved So Far Away. So many favorites, starting with Starless. This was an album that for me symbolizes the beginning of my career.
You guys haven't even gotten back in the room together, and Ed said this is the first time filming this right now, the first time Crossfade's been in the same room in a couple years.
Probably 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're friends. We never had riffs or anything like that. We just kind of got on with our lives and, hope for the best.
I'm still trying to visualize it. A bit surreal at the moment. I think it'll be, I haven't played gigs like that since we did it. I played some shows in between doing little stuff, but I haven't been on a stage or thought about that.
That big festival stage.
It feels like we're just starting brand new. Almost like it was back in 1997 when we didn't have a record. We didn't have a record label. We weren't playing shows. And that's where we find ourselves right now. We don't have a record. We don't have a record label. We may have those in the future. I don't know if we want those right now. But I do know that it feels right to say yes to this, because that is who we are. And apparently it is what people still care about rock music and about Crossfade. And that feels amazing in and of itself. And it's worth going to play this show to see what happens.